Welcome to the Personal Pension Radio Podcast, where you get unconventional insights into wealth building and retirement that actually work. Discover data-driven strategies and learn from a wealth of experience so that you can take your retirement to the next level. Now, here's your host. He was once bitten by a harbor seal, the income engineer, Kraig Strom.
Okay, we are back on Personal Pension Radio. Another show, another fantastic guest, joined on the line here by Drew Lawson. Hello, Drew.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing okay. So today, folks at Personal Pension Radio land out there, we are broadcasting live from Mr. Foley's van, parked on 40th Street in Newport Beach, California, hoping maybe to get a little body surfing in when we're done, right, Drew?
Yeah, I'd love that.
Mr. Foley's been great letting us use his van. We park that van just about anywhere we need to, just to keep ourselves nimble. So for those of you who are new to Personal Pension Radio, personalpensionradio.com is the website, and we are all about optimizing retirement income. And retirement income and optimizing lifestyle does not happen with a product, does not happen with any singular product or investment. It is a compilation of financial things, financial products, and our own personal activities. And today, I've asked Drew to be here because Drew is not only a professional doctor, he's also the owner of Lawson Coaching and Consulting. And performance coaching and coaching in general, we're going to get a lot of information from Drew today because that is the way we ultimately successfully finish well, is we've got to actually move ourselves along our path towards retirement, towards whatever our goal is, and we actually have to do it with a plan, with a strategy. And I've invited Drew to be on the show today to give us some insight into that perhaps help us, if you're struggling with something, to help you actually overcome or go towards a goal that you might have been working on and just having a hard time getting there. So hope that's not too big an order for you today, Drew.
No, that sounds great.
Fantastic. Just a short disclaimer before we get rolling. I am not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. I am a certified financial planner professional. And the advice that I give on each of my shows is don't act on advice that you hear on a radio show or a podcast or that you read in the news. Don't act on that advice until you've had the opportunity to actually sit down with and speak with a professional coach, whether it be a financial coach or personal performance coach like Drew. What you hear today is supposed to be motivational, supposed to get you up and get you going, but make sure that you don't act on the advice that you hear on the radio. Get yourself a specific targeted conversation around your situation before you get out there and start taking action on things. So, Drew, let's jump in. I'd like to hear some background for everybody listening about your family. I mean, I know that you've got quite the family there, and maybe tell us some background about the people who keep you going.
Oh, I've been really blessed with a spectacular marriage. I think we're going on 24 years. We were high school sweethearts, met in Latin class, as all geeks do.
Latin class, that's awesome.
And then we have 3 beautiful kids, and they're in the grips of teenage years, so we're trying to navigate those interesting waters.
Are any of them, here's the big question, though, are any of the kids in Latin class?
No, yeah, there's no Latin there is some Latin anymore, but it's not like it used to be.
Right, that's good. So you're just hanging on for the ride, right?
Yes.
That's outstanding. Now, any hobbies for you? I heard we talked about body surfing, but are you allowed any time for hobbies?
Well, yeah, for me, the joke goes that I'm much more coordinated in the water than I am on land. I'm definitely a water mammal, so my hobbies entail swimming and, when the water's warm, body surfing, and then my other hobbies are all geek related. So I like to read and get stuck on certain topics and kind of do deep dives onto certain subjects.
Oh, that's outstanding. Now, I know that you're a doctor, but how did you go from wanting to be a doctor, or did you want to, or fall into it? How did that come, and then how did this transition to coaching happen? Because it is being a doctor is such a rigorous process, time-consuming process, and then on top of that, to move into the coaching field. How did that all evolve?
Yeah, great question. I do both, and the physician that I am, I'm an emergency physician, and I love my job, and it is filled with, for obvious, reasons, it's filled with crisis, and it's filled with managing a team in stressful situations. And I felt that there were a lot of physicians and going through a lot of trauma and stress, even myself, and recognized that this might be an opportunity to give back to my medical community. And as I went ahead and got master level certification and coach training, I realized that this is a great calling of mine, and that I could give back to my physician community. I could give back to my community at large, and more specifically with executives. And it's just been a wild ride and a lot of fun.
No, that's outstanding. That had to be a little scary as you started going off in that direction, right? I mean, I know that when you, for most people, you start something new and you think to yourself, well, who says that I'm supposed to be that person who someone, should turn to? That's got to be a little nerve-wracking.
Well, yes and no. I think the part that's nerve-wracking is taking the initial dive to start showing up. And for me, coming from my background where it's all about education and getting all the training, that's where I started. So what happened was, once I started doing some executive coach training, my feet got comfortable with the temperature of the water, and I got more and more submerged in the experience, and then it wasn't as hard.
No, I understand. I guess when you start actually practicing in that area, it starts to become more and more second nature. I like to start, I've got a bunch of questions, as you can imagine, but I'd like to start with a motivational quote. You had a very unique motivational quote that I have heard before, but had not heard in a while. I'm not sure if you have that in front of you there.
Yes, I do.
Please share that with us.
We cannot direct the wind, but we can adjust our sails.
How does that influence you in your work, and how do you explain that when someone says, well, what in the world does that mean?
Well, I think our lives are filled with a lot of wind, a lot of storms, a lot of currents, and if we use that boat analogy, we're not in charge of all that happens to us as far as the wind and the things that show up in our life, but the things that we can control are the adjustment of the sails to be able to weather the storms and navigate the storms.
And I really like that. I've had, as all people, we've all had challenges, and that is it. I mean, there's just certain things that you can take care of yourself, and then the outside world comes in and delivers whatever it's going to deliver, and you've got to be prepared to move, to pivot, to adjust. I think that's fantastic. Well, I actually want to start with a pretty big question. I want to warn everybody out there in the audience, if you're driving your car, riding your bike, this particular word might actually make you kind of shudder on your bike, so be careful. So I'm getting you ready. I want to know, because I've gone through your blog and I receive your regular emails, what is the neurochemistry of leadership? Because I've never actually heard those put together that way. What is the neurochemistry of leadership?
Yeah, so a really big, broad question. So let me try to narrow it down. More and more, the research is very solid that our decisions are made by our neurochemistry. And first and foremost, we have this notion that we are thinking creatures that feel. But in reality, we are feeling creatures that think. And the reason being is that everything from the outside world that comes into our world, into our brains, is filtered through a part of the brain called the amygdala. And that amygdala has been adapted and designed to protect us. And so every single thing that comes into our vision, our hearing, sight, sounds, everything, all the sensory things that come into our brain are filtered through the amygdala, and the amygdala says safe or unsafe.
Okay. Is that the fight or flight type thing? Is that where that runs through as well?
Exactly. So that is a protective mechanism, and it says if this is an unsafe thing, if it recognizes something is unsafe, then we go into a stress response. We go into fight, flight, or freeze. And if we are found and the amygdala says, oh, this is a safe thing, then it navigates that information into the medial prefrontal cortex and other areas of the brain that allow us to think more rationally, be able to make complex decisions in an efficient and accurate way.
So it basically says, let me ask you this, if I'm getting this right. So I'm going to use a snowboarding example. Okay, so for me, snowboarding is something that I enjoy doing. I'm not terribly good at it. I may be at the most an intermediate level snowboarder, okay? And for me, I'm fairly comfortable in certain, upwards to intermediate, maybe a little more difficult technical places. But when I start getting into situations where, even though I know for a fact I am not going that fast and I am not about to jump that high, you can tell that at that moment you're coming into that situation, my brain is processing it like, yeah, you shouldn't be doing this, and I'm not able to focus on it. And then at that same moment that I'm kind of freezing about it, somebody's flying by me 30 feet over my head because they're clearly processing that differently. Am I getting that kind of the right comparison there?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. I think we kind of look at the analogies any way we want, that helps us understand it. But as you get more skill and develop more comfort on the snowboard, your brain and your amygdala is going to filter it as more of a safe activity. So then what happens is you won't fight, flight, or freeze. You'll have, and you notice when you are terrified on the snowboard that your vision gets narrow and your heart races, your hands sweat, and you can't think straight. And that's what our society and that's what our world most of the day causes us to do. And therefore, we literally can't think straight. But as you get better and better at something, and as your skills improve on the snowboard, then your vision expands, and your hands are not clammy and sweaty, and your heart is calm. And then you can actually see and enjoy more of what you're doing, and you turn out to start being better and better at it.
Oh, see, gotcha. And that's interesting that I just learned something about my inability in snowboarding from a neurochemistry question. That is now how does then coaching translate back if this is a neurochemical type of a process, right? And for those listening, by the way, I think this topic is hugely important because whether you are running a corporation or working in an office at an entry-level job, you have to understand that these are the types of things, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Drew, that this conversation is exactly the type of thing that might hold you back from promotions at work or taking a leap into your own personal business venture, right?
Absolutely. Very well said. And in fact, some of the studies support the fact that probably 80% of us are running, our decisions and our lives through this amygdala stress response, this fight, flight, or freeze. And when we were, way back when, the reason why we have the amygdala is way back when we were out in the wild and we saw a bush move, our brain was wired to say, that's not a fluffy little bunny rabbit moving that bush. That's a big, huge tiger that's going to eat you. You better run right now.
Right.
as we've developed into sitting behind a desk all day long, our brains have developed, and now associated with that neurochemical pathway is a voice. And we've all heard that voice. It's the voice that says, "Hey, stupid, don't go do that." Or, "Hey, you're not that smart, you can't do that." And that voice is what dictates 80% of our decisions. And so a lot of understanding the neurochemistry is understanding that voice pathway, that thought pathway that is originally adaptive and protective of us, but now basically hijacks us and makes us think that we are, not successful and failures, and and in fact, it actually turns it on to other people. We walk into rooms and think, "Oh no, Joe's here," and that's all part of that amygdala stress pathway. And if we can manage that and calm that pathway and get to the pathway where we're more efficient and more productive and more clear-headed, then we can make significant strides in our businesses.
That is so well said. I appreciate that, because that goes to my next question, I guess, is now, how does coaching, right? So we think of coaching because we just people were, I'm sure many people were watching Alabama, win the championship, for example, and of course there's the big coach, that's out there that gets all the accolades. But as a personal coach, a direct level coach, how does coaching benefit someone in this challenge? It seems like it's built in, hardwired, like, gosh, how do I rewire my brain? How does coaching benefit someone in this situation?
So great question. And, my niche, my passion with coaching is what we've just talked about, the inner game, the, leadership, consciousness, or neurochemistry. And so to me, the really exciting and interesting place is to take a leader and help to rewire their brain chemistry. And way back when I was in medical school, the thought was that there wasn't neuroplasticity, or the flexibility of the neurons in the brain to change was limited to up to 18 years of age. But now we're seeing...
You mean old dog, new trick? The old dog, new trick thing?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Now what we're seeing and what we know now is that the neuroplasticity, the idea that we can change the way our brains are wired, is very true in all the way through to the end of our ages, end of our age. So we can now know that we can rewire our brains, but you need someone to navigate that. You need someone to ask the right questions and know the right things to ask and know the right things to do, so that leader can rewire their brain chemistry. So to me, coaching is about inner game, and it also is about outer game. And the outer game piece is the leadership process, the science of leadership, the leadership competencies. And so there's kind of an inner and outer game process that takes place. And that's, to me, what coaching is all about.
No, I actually appreciate that, because because we have a very broad audience. We have an audience that runs from, just somebody just brand new starting out. I've met folks who listen to the show who are in college. I've met folks who run, I've got people that have contacted me who run larger corporations. So the question I would ask, just to tie this into the audience, is, are there things, that the average college student who perhaps, or the person who's just starting out in a company that does not perhaps have the resources or the time to be working with a coach, are there things that are just simple tricks of the trade that can help someone manage this personally? Because it seems like such a difficult thing to rewire, but are there any tricks or things that people can do individually to kind of help them move in that direction?
Absolutely, and they're inner game things and outer game things. An example of inner game thing is what we just talked about. I mean, honestly, just the idea, the seed planting of recognizing that most of your decisions are driven by your amygdala, and most of your decisions are driven by that voice that was supposed to protect you, but now takes you out of the running, is a huge, huge deal. If you just now leave the call and start to recognize that there's that voice in your head that says, no, you can't do that, or that guy is such a loser, those kind of voice patterns, recognizing that those are not going to the right place in your brain. Those are the amygdala voices that you just need to navigate away from and let those thought patterns go somewhere else, and then start to recognize the healthy, productive thought patterns. Then you're on to something. That's an inner game transition that will really change the way you think and the way you make decisions.
I think that's huge. It's not, I had, not to get too woo-woo on things, but I had attended a conference, a few months ago, and one of the opening workshop segments was a lesson on meditation. And it was, and I have to tell you, I am an ADHD kid, still an ADHD kid. Sitting still is not my ideal, mode of operation. And yet I said, well, I'm here. I paid money to come here. I'm going to listen, and I'm going to do whatever this wonderful lady said. And I actually did experience for the first time some training in meditation, which was just take a moment, be quiet enough to recognize these things. And this seems like that would be an excellent way for people to recognize those amygdala decision or those amygdala voices, right? Am I saying that right?
Right. So, that is another process. It's called somatic quieting. And it's the process of getting in touch with all our senses and being able to use them to quiet or slow the pathway of the amygdala. And so there are, somatic quieting can be exercise, it can be proper diet, it can be sleep is very important. And then it can be what you just mentioned, meditation. I am in your camp. It seems kind of strange to me, but I've warmed up to it by looking at all the research that supports it. And it has a neurochemical basis, and it truly does help to rewire the brain, and it truly helps to quiet that amygdala pathway. And then there's the other piece of it, which is mindfulness, which is meditation is just sitting down and quieting your brain. Mindfulness is the idea of throughout the day connecting with your senses and being more present. Those things have shown in multiple research studies to support allowing you to make better decisions and think more clearly. So I've warmed up to the notion.
Yeah, and I understand where I come from. Maybe a similar position. It was just hard for me to sit still long enough, but I can feel it when I've done it, and I had not really put it together. I had not put that together as far as the benefits of that until we started down this path of neurochemistry and the amygdala and all of these different pieces, and it just kind of clicked. And that comes back to something, and I'm just curious about the time that it takes someone. So let's say that we've got someone out there who's just graduating college, or again, a CEO, a mid-level executive, somebody who's really wanting to move themselves to that next position, that next level. And I'm reminded of something that I had actually read. You cited David Schenck in your blog, and he's the author who talked about 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
But he said short-term intensity cannot replace long-term commitment, right? So how do we overcome? Okay, so here's another big question. How do we overcome our natural tendencies, perhaps, to fall away from and sticking with something to change that amygdala response? How do we fall away? How do we overcome that tendency to fall away, choosing the easier path, right?
Right. Good question. I think it really is self-awareness. I think the biggest piece in leadership is your ability to be aware of what's going on inside your head and what actions and behaviors you're doing because of what's going on in your head. And so the simple act of listening to this podcast today ideally you'll walk away starting to recognize the patterns that are occurring in your head, because most of the time, 80% of us don't recognize the patterns and just go through our lives not recognizing that most of our patterns are generated without our knowing them, and therefore they're non-productive and they're generated by amygdala.
Gosh, see, that's the thing. Just taking the time to actually take that moment that, and now that as I've gone through this, and I know our listeners are doing the same thing, that I'm going through this going, yep, that was a moment that I can recognize those times. There's something else that intrigued me, that when I was first introduced to my coach, so I work with a coach, his name's Gary Lockwood. He is a Vistage coach, and I've worked with him now for a number of years. And it's always challenging when my coach comes to visit, because I know he's going to ask me questions that perhaps I haven't finished answering or I haven't finished addressing. But you actually say something on your website that really I thought that made me smile, because I was in the same exact position. You say, when you ask around and you share these testimonials, and by the way, I'm going to have links to all of this in the show notes. You definitely need to go to Drew's website, CoachDrewLawson.com. You need to go through and just spend some time there, really spend some time there. But the testimonials are just amazing. But you said, when you ask around and you share these incredible testimonials from those people that you have coached, right? Most people say, I don't need coaching, but I might know some guy who could use some coaching. How do you overcome that, I don't need coaching, and how do you overcome that, that personal position? I just think that's funny, because I was in the same boat.
Yeah, I think we're all in the same boat. We're a little bit hesitant, and most of the thing that's great about coaching is it's taking somebody that's functioning well and making them function better. It's, really turning up the volume on their skills and strengths and making them more effective. And so that's the really exciting part of it, is I have clients that say, I want to be more. I want to be more successful. I want to, whether it's make more money or be overwhelmingly happier, whatever it might be, they want more. And if you want more, then you get a coach. I mean, that's what, from the President of the United States all the way down, that's what people hire. They hire coaches to be more.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to say it. I mean, it really does. I mean, everybody has a coach. I mean, Phil Mickelson, one of the greatest golfers in the world, he has multiple coaches, right? You have basketball coaches, you have football coaches, you have coaches for any number of things. That leads me to a question. I think it's always helpful for an audience out there, because there's a lot of folks in the audience, and I'm sure, that are saying, "Oh, this doesn't apply to me. I'm just an average this or an average that." And there's also folks out there who are that CEO level, that high level professional, saying, "I don't need a coach," and they're in that same boat. I always like to ask if you could share a few success stories, kind of giving us a general idea of where someone was and what kind of a position they were in and what they wanted to achieve, and perhaps some things that you feel really proud about in helping them. Just curious if some come to mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the testimonials on my website, and the people that, if somebody were to contact me and say, hey, I'm not convinced, I need to talk to somebody, and then there's some clients that would be glad to share their experiences. But a few come to mind. I mean, I think of one of my clients who owns a number of restaurants, and he was kind of reluctant, but said, hey, I'm going to give this a try. And as we've worked together, his revenues increased by 30%. He's generated, I think he's almost doubled the number of restaurants he has. And he gives a lot of credit to our time together, because that time has allowed him to break through the barriers in his inside game and his outside game to be a more effective leader and to make better decisions. I also think the other client I think of is the one that was kind of a mid-level executive and now has raised, kind of risen through the ranks. And since we've been working together the last 2-3 years, he's moved higher and higher up into the corporate ladder. And he's working less, so that we've worked together to create margin for him. So he's able to spend more time with his kids, more time with his wife, and be a more efficient and better leader with less time at work. So those people that I coach have told me directly, hey, this is a real game changer. This gives me that space and gives me the ability to think better, to make better decisions, and to have more time available for what I really want to do.
No, I'm actually that's great. I appreciate that, and I'm going to link to the testimonials page. I really am going to encourage everybody to spend some time. This is something. This is a website that I would encourage you to just dive into and start just soaking up as much information as you can. And I'll link directly to the testimonials page. And I think the key thing that I'm taking away from this, Drew, is that whether you're a mid-level executive, whether you work in the mailroom, or whether you run the company, okay, or whether you're the top attorney in your community, that these testimonials and these success stories of having a coach, having someone that actually can coordinate the remapping of your personal systems in your brain, that's a powerful thing at whatever level you're at, right? When you look at this, Drew, and you've got teenagers now, right? You got teenagers, and I've got an 18-year-old, right? This is going to be totally an out of left field kind of a question. How do you approach the conversation with thick as a rock 18-year-old or a teenager in such a way that they don't just ignore you as I don't want to hear that? Are there some tidbits there that just to help break through someone who seems to be just impassable?
I found with teenagers it's timing. If they're well fed and in a happy mood, then you've got some space. You've got some space to actually have what we would call a coaching moment. And to me, the coaching moments are filled with asking questions. Very few kids, they get told what to do, and they get, constantly told rather than asked. And I think that if you can catch them at the right place at the right time, and then ask them some great questions, then you have a great opportunity there. I wanted to add also that if you're kind of hesitant and not sure about coaching, then I would offer two things. One, I think you're going to give them my cell phone number, my email. Reach out to me. I'm glad to have a 30-minute free consultation. We can talk about where you're at and where you want to be, and we can start there. And then the other thing is, if you really aren't sure about it, just send me your email, and I'll put you on my newsletter. And my newsletter only comes out once a month. It's only like a couple paragraphs long, so you can handle reading it. And so I have a lot of people on my newsletter that just kind of look at it, read it, and then eventually they warm up to it. And if they don't, that's okay too. So those are other opportunities.
Really, really good, actually. And yes, you're right. All of those things will be in the show notes, the email address for you, the website, the mobile phone. And again, Personal Pension Radio, the mission of the show and the mission of me, my practice as a certified financial planner is to help people position themselves for the best possible exit, whatever your exit looks like. See, retirement isn't the same anymore. It's not, we're going to work 30 or 40 years for IBM and then we're going to retire and we're going to go to the lake. It's not the same nowadays. Exit looks different for a lot of people. Whatever yours is, our goal is to help you position yourself for the best possible lifestyle. And my thought today was that lifestyle is not all about income. You've got to be happy in your skin. You've got to be happy with your life to really enjoy the success of your retirement planning. Does that be a good way to put it, Drew?
Well said. Beautifully said.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do is I want to wrap up here with a call to action. I want you, as the Personal Pension Radio community, you've actually been sending in some great questions, have been covering them on the show. And please continue to go to personalpensionradio.com. Throw your questions in the contact section, and we'll do our best to add them to the show. If you'd like to hear about any particular topics on the show, please also send it through the website there as well. Really appreciate it. Drew, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. We really appreciate having you on the show.
My pleasure. Anytime.
All right, everybody. That wraps it up. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you for listening to the Personal Pension Radio Podcast. If you missed anything during the show, that's okay. We took the notes for you. Check the show notes for links, offers, and a full transcript. And don't forget to head over to personalpensionradio.com and download your free retirement income report. While you're there, we'd appreciate some iTunes love. Please leave us a fantastic rating on iTunes by going to personalpensionradio.com/iTunes. Thanks again for listening.